The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Week we go to a different African country. So this week we were not far. You can take a bus, you can fly. Democratic Republic of Congo.
Okay.
Country. If you're a lover of Lingala, Sukus, don't judge me, but yes, right?
Yeah.
That is the place. That is the place to go.
Yeah.
But beyond that, a very rich country. You know, resources. I say that Congo is the giant of the world because of the resources it has. Do you know that Congo has oil reserves that have not even been tapped yet?
Yeah.
Millions and millions of barrels, you know?
Yeah.
So today we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz being closed. We can just go into this border here and find a way to sorting out our problems, you know?
Straight to Congo.
Straight to Congo.
Straight to
you know?
Congo.
Yeah. So we call upon the African Union, the East Africa community, working together to ensure that this brother, this sister that is the Democratic Republic of Congo gets to grow, be the giant and the king that it is today.
Absolutely.
But we came back with a proverb from there. So tunakupea kazi. Yeah, na kazi yenye tuko nayo kidogo sana. You do not teach the paths of the forest to an old gorilla. You do not teach the paths of the forest to an old gorilla. How would you interpret it?
Raisi.
Umeanza na literature.
Hey.
Hey. You do not teach the paths of a forest to an old gorilla. It sounds like for this gorilla, it sounds like they know that forest like the back of their hand. Day or night, they know how to be able to get through from one point to the other. And you see that a lot, even with our older generation. There are certain things that they do and you're like, me, I needed Google Maps. How come you just knew it was? You know, just thinking about geographically, but also just in terms of life and everything else that they get to do. The older generation, understanding that I also have white hair now and I've accepted, but the older generation... but the older generation, they, you know, you don't have to really necessarily always have to tell them exactly where. They have learned a lot of things which works in their favor. And we're still to learn a whole lot from them. So that would be my take on it.
Your interpretation would always be right because it is yours. You know, yours is different from ours, right? And that takes us straight to our conversation now. The adolescent, you know, we've just from talking about the adolescent as well in high school right now and how they're participating in the world. But from a home perspective, parents are here with these kids. Today we're talking about Gen Alphas, Gen Zs, and those are two generations, and our parents who are baby boomers and Gen Xers, you know?
And millennials.
And millennials as well, So it is a question of how do we ensure that even as we're raising these children, we're raising them to know who they are, to know that they can talk to us, that we are approachable, and that we're here to help them, guide them, because we are the gorillas in that forest and understand the path better.
That's a really good question. I think one of the things that young people have been teaching me in the clinic space is that they are really trying to figure out a lot of those things. And a lot of things that made sense for boomers and Gen Xers is not making sense for them because the way that forest has shifted. The forest has shifted, so now we're having to teach the boomers and the Gen Xers and the millennials how to now navigate the new one, which is for the younger generation, so the adolescents and the young people. So, and when I think about it age-wise, according to WHO, that's 10 to 24. So their language, their influences are very different from what we experienced when we were their age. And so we have to learn now their forest. In this now new age, we are the ones who we're not in the old forest. Right? But then at the same time, helping them learn how to cope within the context of our Kenyan culture, our African culture, is something that we really need to be very intentional about. Because with social media, social media has made the world and dengu. Allow me to call it that, because we are getting to see everything everywhere, unfiltered all the time. Everything everywhere all at once, right? Like the movie. And with that, it ends up almost diluting what we were used to. What was now more metered, more, paced in a different way in terms of the Kenyan culture and Kenyan space. And so navigating that for a lot of parents, for a lot of caregivers, I'm finding they're like, huku ni wapi? Huku ni wapi? Meanwhile, the young person is like, you're not,
you don't have to pay.
As in, we're already over here. How come you're still over here? But even with that, there are a few people who are still struggling in terms of just how to be able to cope in that new space and everything that comes at them all the time, so unfiltered. So that's what I would say about that.
Well, Dr. Harry, adolescence is not a new thing. It's been here since mankind. It's a phase we all have to go through. So socialization, I think, is what helps us to transition from one stage to the next, from one phase of development to the next. And as you rightly put it, for a long time, we never had social media as an agent of socialization. We had the family, we had the school, the society. But now, social media has taken that space. And then, the change of values and norms and the exposure people are getting is totally different. But humans remain the same. We are creatures of habit. And I think, in my opinion, we don't learn much from what we are taught, even as we are growing up. It's from what we see. We mop, we absorb things. Because you can train your kid to do what you want them to do, but the best way they will learn is when they see you do what you do.
Absolutely.
So the home setting remains a major, orientation and socialization agent. Where would you say, in terms of shift, where are we as a Kenyan community in terms of sustaining an environment that inculcates values, and belief systems that are worth keeping? Because, there are things that are worth knowing, but there are others that are worth keeping. But have we shifted far off? Are you worried? Are you concerned by our parenting trends? Are you concerned by the environment we are creating at home, basically? As we raise these adolescents?
As we raise these young people? I think that's a really good point that you bring up in terms of the home being like at the core of how we expect the next generation to turn out. But then also, because of the way the economic structures have been, the parent who used to come home at 4 or 5 p.m. is now coming home at 8, 9, either due to traffic or deadlines, etc.
Or they're working at home.
Or they're working from home. They're working from home, but you're sitting in front of your computer in a separate room.
You're there, but not there.
You're there, but not there. And so that has really shifted things, right? And so what, unfortunately, I've started seeing as a trend in a lot of urban settings is that while your intent is for the right values to be able to shift and to impart those values, you're not spending enough time necessarily with your children, with your young people. And it's not entirely your fault. You're trying to provide for them. So going out, doing the work, and making sure that you provide for them. So then they're left with caregivers. They're left with nanny. They're left with screens to be able to do a lot of the educating, value setting, as in system, that sort of element. So what I would say is that it has been worrying. And what we do try and do, especially in the clinic space and when we go out into the schools, is really to have honest conversations with teachers, with parents, about what the gaps they feel are, and then also talking to the young people. And then based on the feedback that we get, then we're able to appropriately coach parents and coach teachers. So home environment, school environment, because these are the places where they get their main value systems. And a lot of them are mostly healthy, so they don't necessarily land in the hospital. So the guys who get to see them the most, we're having to reteach and re-educate and support them in terms of, okay, yes, you have this big workload, you really want to provide for these young people in this way, but how do we ensure that you're still present?
Okay.
So in our traditional settings, especially for boys, like when they go for circumcision, they're taken for a week.
Yeah.
I always, I always find it very interesting. In that week, a lot is crammed in. You're a man now. This is what is expected. You have the surgery. And then after that, there's just a bit of a withdrawal from that. And I always wonder, what would that look like if it is stretched over a longer period of time, a year, 2 years, where you sit with those young men. By the time they're going under the knife, you've imparted certain things that you know for sure. We're on the same page about these things. You understand what this cut is about.
Okay.
Yeah. So I always, and I know people time holidays. And in holidays now that it's 2-3 weeks.
Intervention.
In 1 week, and then you go and recover the rest.
Exactly.
At home. But then, you find that with that model in mind, because that's our traditions, with that model in mind, how do we then expand that much more so that you're able to just continue to do that in the home setting?
All right.
Yeah, so yes, we are worried, but I'm finding a lot more people in the school spaces, in hospital spaces, just really trying to educate, to be able to empower and coach parents, caregivers, how to be able to mitigate that better.
Terry,
Yeah.
I mean, in my little interaction with these young ones, they're very aware. And sometimes, people say that ignorance is bliss. So in your days, mental health was not a thing. But right now you sit with an average 10-year-old. They tell you, by the way you are speaking to me, I don't like it, and it's making me feel some type of way. And it's the same conversation that we're having with Gen Zs at work. They'll text the manager, I don't feel like coming today. I'm feeling low, so allow me. You wouldn't dare do that as a millennial or older. I mean, it's allegiance to the job. But you find that these kids are carrying a lot. And this just from talking, even at church, because I teach 12, 13-year-olds. They're called crossroaders.
Yeah.
They sit down with these kids.
Yeah.
They're telling you stories of their friends taking their own lives. They're talking about bullying. They're talking about social media and its impact. I mean, one of them was telling us she was invited to a sex party. There's a 12-year-old. And we ask, okay, does your parent know? No, it's my social media. So looking at these children, at least from your practice, what is some of their greatest need or cry that they're facing right now that maybe it might not be as normal to the older generations, but is really, really something that they do need? What are some of their greatest needs?
Some of the greatest needs. You've hit the nail on the head with the mental health one. And you're right, they're a lot more self-aware. And I think it's also because there's a lot of more information coming in. And while there's still a lot of stigma about getting help, there's a lot of more awareness about what do symptoms look like, and this is what this feels like. So mental health is one of them. In terms of sexual reproductive health and sexual reproductive health rights, I think is also another significant concern when we look at numbers from the Demographic Health Survey and see pregnancy rates for 15 to 19-year-olds. We notice that while over the years, yes, it's been coming down, but we still do have a significant number of young people who are still getting pregnant. So I always ask people, how did we get there? As in, while we want to sometimes bury our heads under the sand, I think about pregnancy as one thing. I think about sexually transmitted infections, where I think by 2022, they had said that 3% of people, I think 15 to 24, had an STI. So this is just sexual reproductive health. So I think being able to learn about your body, learn about agency with your body and the autonomy around that, and making conscious decisions, around your sexual reproductive health, needs to be addressed better, especially because that's also one of the other issues. So we said mental health, we said sexual reproductive health, coping in transition. So you're going from this new, you had mentioned the education system, the shift from the older education system to the newer one. We'd had people come into the hospital space and you're struggling with what's this new world order, as in, I suddenly am feeling a little lost in terms of what the expectations are. They keep telling me meeting expectations, and I've really, really done over and above what would have been expected. Then you have the guys who are in high school and trying to cope with high school. You are in day school, suddenly you're thrown in boarding. For a lot of millennials, they're like, see us, we survived. But for a lot of young people, if you've not given them the necessary coping skills to be able to be a lot more independent in that boarding school space, you find that they're not coping well in terms of that. So those are the three top ones that I would say: mental health, sexual reproductive health, and coping. They may not all have great coping skills.
You know, I want to look at it from a different perspective in terms of just being approachable as parents or as caregivers. Why do I bring that? I'll give you an example of my niece. She's in high school right now. And one of the things I told her is, fine, we can sit down and have a talk. Just talk about anything about life, about you, know about me, I want to know about you, who you are. And the first thing I did was I invited her for a date. Like on a Saturday, it's just you and I. We go out for lunch. Tell me what you like, everything, you know. I want to go swimming. I want to have pizza. I just want to enjoy, go out for a drive and all that. That's what she wanted. We went and did all those things, but I told her, this is what you want, but I want to know who you really are. You know, as parents and caregivers, most of the time, we are raising children that we do not know. You know, we think that they are our children and we know who they are, but there's a person to your child that you need to be in tandem with, you know, so that if you see your child is quiet today, perhaps there's something happened, you know, and they just don't know how to tell you because you've not opened that space. So are we opening these spaces rather? Should we have a discussion around parents opening themselves, not to be people giving advice or whatever, right? But that this child should be free enough to know that my parent is my friend, that they have my back regardless, you know, because this child, the first flight was, I will take you for that first flight so that no one can confuse you. You can always say, you know, uncle has done this thing.
So that no one can come and just,
so that even in your body autonomy as it changes, right? You're free to talk to me. Let's go out there. Tell me the kind of sanitary towels that you like, you know. I will pick them for you. I will carry them. You just have to walk next to me, you know. Are we having these spaces to just create that security for them to feel like, you know, they got me?
That's I like that question because I think the answer is double-edged. And allow me to explain that. So on the one hand, it's one thing to create a safe environment where you can come and be as you are. But on the other hand, you need to give them the right language. So in terms of being able to name certain emotions. So I'm always asking specifically, like when someone is feeling some type of way, a lot of the times people are either happy, sad. But then I always ask the other emotions, what are the other things that you're feeling? Okay, you had this thing happening at school. How did that make you feel? What's the thing that you felt? And actually giving young people that language. And I say young people from as young as that 8, 9, so that by the time they come into your class, 12, 13, they're able to have the right language about exactly what they're feeling. So that's like one part of it. And then also having the parent who was raised on those lectures. Shifting from not being a lecture, but creating a safe environment for them to be open and have the discussion. The forums I've been when I've talked to parents, I'm always like, remember when you're creating a safe space, you have to prepare your face because safe space means you're going to receive a lot of different information that might shock you. One, but also apart from just that safe space, having the right language between a parent and a young person, I think is really critical. So I think, and that's why I was calling it double-edged. That safe environment, we do need to teach the young people in terms of like the right languaging around that, but also for the parent to be able to, how to be able to navigate that. Because I feel sometimes parents are given they're getting very bad PR.
Yeah.
And let me as a parent, parents are getting really bad PR and they're really trying hard. And the thing that I always say is that every young person, there is no more Kenya. So if there is no more Kenya, everybody's coming in unique.
You figure it out.
You figure it out. And then when you think you figured it out with the firstborn, the secondborn shows you a different story. So I'm always telling guys, imagine, cut yourself some slack as long as you're willing to be in that space to learn that individual and treat them like a fingerprint and treat them as individuals and learn how to communicate around them. Then your willingness already gives you 50%. You're already at pass mark. Now we just need to get the other things. That's why I'm always saying parents are given such a bad rap, and they're really trying hard.
And sometimes, but I digress. For the parents,
Wewe kama mzazi.
I think the challenge we face is that we are not able to identify ourselves in the different phases we are when we are raising our kids. The person you are when you're raising your firstborn is not the person you will be when you're raising your secondborn and the thirdborn. And that's why you find even kids have different relations with the same parent. You know, you're different kids to the same mother, to the same father. So parents out there, we need to have that conversation. But we are doing well so long as we are doing our best. But now, back to the adolescents. I think, in my opinion, and I would want you to demystify my thoughts. I think what is important for them is like a sense of belonging, identity, and self-esteem in that phase. Because once we are able to ground them at that level, for them to generate a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, it anchors them to have some, you'd say, latitude in trying to negotiate and bargain with the world. But we don't have enough stimulation nowadays because we don't have the aunties and the Uncle Dennis, enough of them to help, not mentor, but just, facilitate and stimulate that growth. We don't have the grandparents whom you'd have been taken to during holidays and you'd learn a few things, or the whatever stimulation you'd have gotten from the old gorillas who know the forest, and the paths very well. So you find parents struggling with their own kids in isolation, and the support they get is the outsourcing they do either from the screens or the schools or the church setup. But the real values are what you hold as a parent is what you can easily transfer to the kids. So when there is not enough stimulation to anchor this sense of identity, the sense of belonging, and boost the self-esteem, teach the girls how to negotiate the cycle when the onset, the boys how to respect the spaces of their sisters in the home. There's a lot that goes on. So, and then the shifting, setup, how we are living nowadays, you find you live in an apartment. We have even young kids who are suffering from vitamin D because they don't get enough sunlight. So you can imagine what happens with your elder sister over the weekends. Just be home, playing games and many other things. When you look at all that, are we ready for that transition? Because we talk about modernization, westernization, but culture remains a major component that binds us together. Are we losing so much in terms of in the effort of trying to catch up with the rest of the world? But we find that we are leaving behind a lot more that would be useful for us, even in the future, especially for the young ones.
Wow. I think that we've not lost it completely. There's been a lot of advances that have come with modernization, which we can't ignore, like education that we didn't have before, that has given a lot more people agency and to be able to advance families. When I think about value systems, I'm finding as the young Gen Z, Gen Alphas are getting more self-aware, I'm finding parents are also getting a lot more self-aware and wanting to just plug back in terms of their roots, and then being able to teach that to the next generation. And even if you don't have Uncle Dennis, you find that then in church there are other uncles and aunties who take up the mantle, or in other religious settings and other community settings as well. And so I'm hopeful because I don't think our culture is lost. I'm finding people, even in the urban spaces, really reaching and just saying, what is the thing we used to be able to do? You know, the girls used to be able to sit together and talk about this. And I'm finding people getting together and starting to do that a lot more. And so, like you said, in terms of that social development, I think there are still significant inputs. It just requires a lot more intentionality on our part. We still do need to be very clear about boundary settings, because again, a lot, like you said, millennials, we really do work, and we work to the point, to the detriment sometimes of family. And sometimes even me, I've been that person who then later, even my child is like, surely. As in, surely. As in, you've not been home, then you've come with your laptop and you've opened it and you're continuing to do work. But I think I'm hopeful, because the value systems are still within our communities, and they are still helping us in terms of identity. One of the things that I am loving about what has happened with Gen Z and Gen Alpha is when you go out there and then you realize, based on the music that's out there now, the trends that are out there right now in terms of TikTok, we have an identity. Like, there are places I go and somebody will do a Kenyan TikTok trend and ask me, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's us. That's us. That's us. Yes, that's us. And so, in terms of that element, I think we're still, our societies are still doing a lot in terms of building the values, building socially the psychosocial development of the adolescent. That being said, the vast majority of adolescents, as a result, are transitioning really well. But then there's that percentage of people. Like, when we think about adolescents, like 10 to 19 right now are like a quarter of our population. So that's, when you think about
significant,
that's significant. That's about 11 to 12 million young people. And then out of those, that a quarter of the population, you have a small number who we still need to keep screening and checking on, because these transitions, the values have not translated very well. They're not being able to cope either in the school or home environment. And that in the context of parents still not being able to come into the healthcare space to seek mental health care support, being able to just do a total head to toe and just figure out what else is happening. And so, while the vast majority are very much well, and we then assume everybody is well, we still need to keep screening and checking in and seeing where they are, so that we can see if there are any lapses in terms of their development. And why I say development is because that social part is a significant part of the development. Because I'm always telling guys, when babies are small, you look for when they're sitting up, when they're starting to walk.
Milestones,
Milestones. But the milestones for an adolescent are those social things. Are you able to hold a conversation with your uncle? Are you able to do conflict resolution after you've disagreed with your cousin? And so, like, now that's why I'm just like, those holiday times when people come together, is so important to keep doing that, because it's in those environments, in those safe spaces, that they learn how to deal with that before they go out into the big world and then now deal with it in workplace or when you go to your tertiary education spaces. So I don't know if that answers that question.
It does. But now we have another Uncle Dennis B. This is Uncle Dennis A.
Uncle Dennis A.
And it's common, but it's unspoken, that you find parents introducing their kids to vices in the name of, let me teach them how it is done. Somebody will say, I'm taking my son, I want them to taste alcohol from my home. I want to be the one to show them how to do that. The intent, like you said, sometimes the intention is good, but the precedent that you're setting up or what you are introducing them to could unleash
other things.
And I'm using just alcohol as a basic, because it's legal, but it has a lot of ramifications that we deal with, consequences that we deal with, largely in a society. And there are things we could mitigate up against. And there are many other things. You see a mother teaching her young daughter to do makeup. The child is not of age yet, but in other areas, that is being described as distortion of self-image. That's that tender age, you should be teaching them how to accept themselves as they are, live with themselves, and then later on, perhaps, when it is age appropriate. So my question is on age appropriateness. How do we bridge the gap between what we desire for our kids to know, and they should, because it is an existence of the world, and the tender age they're in at that time. Bearing in mind, we don't want to distort the self-image, the self-perception, and really not really just wanting them to fit in, because the fear of missing out is also another element that is bringing uniformity, and it takes away individualism. How do we find the balance?
Okay, so those are like three things you've said. So let me try and... so the first one, in terms of introducing certain things. So what the research tells us is that for a lot of like mental health conditions, they sort of start in those teen years. The other thing that we are also getting to see from the research is that brain development goes all the way till age 24. Sasa tunaanza kusikia hata 28 inaweza extend kidogo, right? And so when you think about introducing some of those vices to a growing brain, you are actually setting them up for a lot of challenges. So one of the things I usually tell people is that, can we wait till at least the brain finishes developing? Then you can introduce all these things after. Of course, now, bearing in mind that we don't want the interference of these substances to what is supposed to be, the normal brain experience, normal brain growth. So I'm always very, very cautious when people are like, I want people to learn at least where I can teach them, because there are certain papers that were, that were published from the US and from Canada that were actually saying that when parents are more permissive, young people even drink even more. And so you have to be very cautious when you're introducing it from that perspective, because I see you don't have an issue with it. I'm likely to just continue to indulge. But then for the vast majority of young people, some will experiment and be done with it. Like let me speak for myself. I tasted alcohol. I was like, I don't get it.
This is not for me.
This is not for me. But and that was just in terms of experimentation, and found that this is not what I liked. And so thankfully for a lot of young people, what we have seen is that a lot of them just experiment and they are like, not for me. And we see that not just with alcohol, we see that with nicotine. When someone tries a vape or someone tries a nicotine pouch, and they're like, I don't get what the hype is. I cannot relate. I know there was an influencer who was like, I struggle with anxiety. And suddenly when I was on this pouch, my heart rate through the roof. Like I felt like I was having a panic attack. How is this enjoyable? So a lot of the young people will try and be like, I'm not going to continue with this. So what I usually tell people is, instead, teach them the right values. Teach them about balance. There are very many ways you can teach about moderation without having to expose someone to a vice. You can still be able to use things that are not going to be dangerous to their growth and their development. Understanding that young people, in terms of that brain development, are curious, they are experimental. In fact, that's why high school we were being taught all those complicated things in math and chemistry and all that stuff, because our brains could be able to gain that. Please, if all of us were sitting in that class today, I can tell you for free, the struggle would be real. Compared to somebody whose brain is still developing, they're still experimenting with different formula and doing all these different things and figuring out how it works. So why not leverage on that ability when you involve them in sports, when you involve them in certain extracurricular? You were talking about the creative space. Just having them just see what is the expanse of what they can be able to do with their creativity, and learning balance within that rather than exposing them to vices. So, which goes back to like just the different reframing we do a lot of the times in the healthcare space. A lot of mental health care practitioners, shout out to all of them, who do a lot of this reframing, so that yes, Uncle Dennis B has the right intention, but we just have to sort of reframe and redirect it to bring out the best in this young person. So I don't know if that answers the two of the three things.
And Dr. You talked about transitions, which I feel in the circles that I'm in, those who have teenagers, they're really going through it. And sometimes, as you say, you have to extend grace to the parents. Sometimes you can feel overwhelmed because you took your child to school, you're being called, do you feel poor? You go take the child to the doctor, there's nothing wrong with them. Like, not even a cold. They're like, okay, what is going on? And it seems it's happening with a lot of parents, and they don't know what exactly is going on. From the kid's perspective, that transition maybe from day school to boarding school is a challenge in of itself. But how do you handle, especially this case of unaitwa, unachukua mtoto, hakuna shida lakini akona shida na ujui ni shida gani. Millennials and older ones, we like pointing out kichwa inakuuma, it's a headache. You are given a note for a headache, so you eat special diet. That's the trauma. Yeah? Some people used to be sick because they want special diet. But now...
And please, you'll allow me to talk about special diet. Akiweka a pin there.
Yeah, but how do we handle transitions in a manner that is accommodative, in a manner that is healthy for these kids?
Yeah. So in the healthcare space, we do get to see these young people who, yes, you've been pulled out of school, you're not feeling well, and when we do the lab tests, we don't find anything that points to an infection. It doesn't mean that nothing is wrong. And so usually then we also do, and I always like to think about our healthcare as 360, where you're not just looking at the physical and listening to the chest, heart, taking blood, but you're also doing screening. You're also just looking through how are things at home, how are things at school, how's your diet going, what are your regular habits, etc. And in the process of that conversation, some things come out. And what I absolutely love about young people is that they are very honest.
Yeah.
If you meet them at a place of honesty, they most of the time will meet you also with honesty and just tell you, actually, this is what is happening. And then trying to figure out in the moment, what can we help you to do? How can we make things better in the moment? And what are the things that we can be able to do to support you in the school environment? So a lot of my work is also speaking to schools. So the school nurse, school teachers, sometimes it's a simple note. Sometimes it's going into the school space and doing a lot of education. And sometimes it's actually doing, referring them either to the psychologist, to psychiatry, a combination of those, and understanding that a lot of people have stigma. People don't want to hear my child is going to going to see a mental health practitioner. But I'm always like, it's really important because they're able to pick out certain elements and together with us now in adolescent medicine, there are certain things we are able to pick out and say, this is what the treatment plan would then look like, which doesn't look like amoxil, brufen, paracetamol ×3, as in that sort of thing. But then there are also other things in your daily living that we do need to make modifications in so that you can get to feel better. Which then brings me to special diet. Aki, let me talk about special diet.
I was that child.
You are that child. What was special diet? So here's the thing, and I get into trouble with some of my patients because I don't typically write special diet. I'm fortunate to work in a system where we have allergy specialists. So that now when we're putting you on special diet, it's not just beans give me heartburn. Okay, let's get to the allergy doctor so that we see what's going on, or the stomach specialist or gastroenterologist to see what else is happening. But usually I'm very cautious because remember, this young person is growing. In order to grow, you need proteins. Special diet ni nini? Special diet used to be cabbage rice, potatoes, cabbage rice.
Rice, actually. Sikagideri rice.
There was, when you think about a lot of special diet options, and soup ya nyama. Soup. Not the actual. And so
it's
usually
good for your bones.
It is good for your bones. So now, but for this growing young person, and you're growing in that age of 10 to 20, we need you to have your protein. So I'm always asking young people, sasa nikikuandikia special diet, what is our protein option? So they're like, no, I'll just have potatoes and the cabbage. I'm just like, yes, but do you want to keep coming to see me? And I also ask parents, if you want to be my regular patient, keep protein out of the diet, you will be here frequently. Because that means this young person, when it comes to sports, you're going to be in injury time most of the time. You need protein. See, now a lot of people are now gymming and taking a lot of protein is because you need your muscles to repair. Now this young person who's growing and is in sports with no protein, so they're going to be constantly in the hospital, either with injury or they're unwell and their immune system is down. So I'm always telling guys, be very cautious about special diet. And now a lot of schools, I'm finding them accommodating, like, okay, what is the alternative protein? And then they're able to provide an alternative protein.
You know, Doc, because I will say it, I was that kid. But when I went back to hospital, I remember Dr. Gandam, he rest in peace, took me through test and found out that problem was not beans, because I could eat beans at home, but in school there was a problem. So it went further into investigating how the food is prepared, you know, so that we deal with the problem, not with beans was not the problem.
Beans was not the problem.
They used to add kerosene in your food.
That was just cool. But Doc, that is just
impact of palm prices and straight over moon.
You see, so there is a new kid on the block, social media. You know, and again, we'll go back to my niece, Uncle, you know, I want a phone because I'm of that age. I want to touch base with my peers. You know, social media is out here, and as parents, for those who don't know how to use it, how to control it, it's very difficult to make a decision on whether to give your child a phone, how to control it, because they don't know. You know, fortunately for some of us, we know how to limit social media use, to even just track the usage of that phone, you know. So there are parents who nataka sitakupatia because you're not of age. But remember, this child has a friend who has a phone. So when they meet, they will go through that phone without supervision, you know. And then there are also those who will just give a child a phone blindly because shika, yet the child has come and told you in school, tunatumiwa homework kwa WhatsApp. So clearly the kid needs to be on WhatsApp to access what? To access homework, you know. But as parents, there is social media as well that goes. So there is TikTok, you know, people are dancing and having a good time and everything. So how do parents deal with that affair? Because for me, I said, okay, so we have to strike a deal. We have to agree. It was a conversation, 2 hours, 3 hours conversation. You know,
was a heavy debate.
Yeah, because it's you're not of age. Because I made her understand why I'm telling her she's not of age to have a phone, but because she needs it because of school. I will give it to you, but you need to understand that I will be monitoring everything that is happening on the phone. So that from the word go, she knows. She knows that Uncle has given me a phone for this specific purpose. So if it's Instagram, you install the Instagram and you put the safety mechanisms that are there. If it's on Google as well, there's safety mechanism on every app that is on that phone with clear understanding that I have to be checking the phone every week to just make sure that everything is safe. You know, it's a conversation many parents are not having. Should we start having these conversations in that manner? And perhaps parents themselves training themselves so that they are able to know how to go about it.
Hey, you've had a lot of conversations with your niece.
Hey,
I feel like
baby girl needs to.
You both need to get on a podcast, I think, is my thought. But you bring out a really good point in terms of what's the appropriate age for being able to have a device. And always when people say you're not of the right age, so a lot of young people develop not at the same pace. So you'll find a 12-year-old who's very a lot more mature than a 12-year-old. Then you find a 15-year-old who's still, you're finding, I am not quite comfortable. So a lot of the times what I do recommend is, while you're saying yes, not of age, then you need to think about what goes into having a phone device. What does safety look like? What are the safety mechanisms around that? Do they understand that? Do they understand what consent looks like? Do they understand what grooming would look like online? So usually not just telling them you're not of age, but also starting to put in those skills in their toolkit to prepare them for when a parent deems is the right age, because our legal system doesn't really talk about young people should be getting at this. We're not at Australia level.
No,
See,
true.
Australia
Yes.
has done a few bans in terms of social media and being able to access that, which has caused a ripple, because everybody's like, how? You're a first world country. Yani, if you guys are doing this, then should we be following suit? But then for me, mine is, we need to teach. Like, I would want to teach your niece about what safety looks like online. What are the things that she can come and report to you with no negative consequences, but she's noticed, hey, there's this, and I remember you and I talked about
it.
this, and I'm not comfortable. Or this person, was chatting with me on, it looks like it's a 12-year-old boy, but this person asked me to do this. In that chat, and I remember you and I had that conversation about this. So even as you're saying, not of the right age, I think what's even more important is teaching them the skills, because eventually they're going to have a device. If adults are struggling,
how about kids?
See, office places, by the guys block, there's like a way they block access to the internet so that people can work. And that's the adult. So, and I always tell parents and I always tell adults in any setting, you're the number one influencer in this child, in this adolescent. Like, they're watching you. So I cannot be on my phone scrolling and then I'm telling you you're not of age or go outside and play. But I'm sitting on the couch scrolling. So teaching them what is appropriate, teaching them about safety, teaching them about consent, teaching them about, decent time to be, online, not just monitoring at the end of the week. Actually, there are actually apps that cut off. Cut off immediately at 2 hours, or homework was supposed to be 3 hours, it cuts off after that. So thinking about those things, because you do need to set those boundaries while you're training them to be able to set them for themselves. So you kind of have to do those things in tandem rather than just being absolute for you're not of age. No is not working anymore. So teach them the skills. Put the boundaries in place while you're teaching them to set boundaries for themselves, especially when it comes to social media and devices.
But Dr. I think there's someone here who's actually brought in something that is very interesting. That at that at that period when they're really growing real fast, So there is social media, there is school, there is their body, and they need to understand all these things. But there is the need to sleep and enough of it that many really don't talk about, because for many parents, unalala sana wewe, shida yako ni nini? How critical is sleep for a child who's growing up at that period of adolescence?
Kwanza, now we're talking about sleep during the holidays. Sleep is so key. So usually for adolescents, when they get into that stage of their brain is growing, the hormonal shift, they tend to sleep later. Like, they are not those people for 7 p.m. You notice if you tell a teenager to go to bed at 7, they'll sleep probably at around 10, 11. But then also they end up waking up much later, ideally in terms of their normal rhythm. And so usually they require a significant amount of sleep. That 8 hours of sleep, not even 6 to 8, like 8, 9 hours of sleep, which gets so disrupted during the school term, because you hear a lot of young people coming into the clinic space and telling us they sleep at midnight, they're up at 4 a.m. for preps, which I'm always like, you're surviving on 4 hours of sleep. You're like a medical registrar, medical personnel who's on
medical instant.
Which is not healthy. So usually what I say is that sleep is really critical, and I usually try my best to tell young people, even during the holidays. I know, because you don't have school the next day, guys are sleeping at 5 a.m., waking up at noon, as in all this disruption. Just the same way your heart beats regularly, you thrive on rhythms. And so setting a regular bedtime, even if it's at 10, 11, and then waking up at that 7, 8, and having that on a regular basis, especially like during the holidays, would be really critical. And then during the term, and this is where schools, I don't know what we're going to do.
Zungumza na head teacher.
I don't know. Maybe there's a head teacher here.
Leaving home at 4:30 or 5.
I know he'll be going for a parents' meeting.
You're a parents' meeting, and then you have all this homework that you have to finish before the next day. But then thinking about if a lot of schools understood that if your candidates sleep better, they're going to perform better. I think we need to do that research to just demonstrate it. But we have actually seen it demonstrated in other
Are there instances where you've handled disturbed adolescents only to realize the challenge is the parent and the home setting? The kid has no issue. How is the prevalence?
Where? It's... I'm trying to think. I don't think I have an exact number in my mind, but I have seen a number of them where now when you sit down and sort of peel the layers back, you realize that, again, rhythms, there's a disruption in the rhythm within the home. We do see that. And unfortunately, especially with the shift of the way the family structure is looking like now, because we are seeing the whole spectrum, grandparents raising kids, blended families, yes, nuclear families, but then also complete, shifts within that. So yes, we do see that. However, what I have found encouraging is that once we discover that, most of the parents and caregivers are open to I don't even want to say correction. They're open to adjustments and being able to support the young person, because sometimes you don't even realize that it has caused a ripple effect. And that disruption might be something as simple as you work in Nairobi, the rest of the family is in Mombasa. Just that one thing, and you've come to provide for them. So just trying to figure out what does that then look like has been something that we find ourselves also working and coaching families around.
Unfortunately, when it's sweet, time is never enough. Dr. Njeri Karianjai, a beautiful place to end the conversation, and a lot that we've learned this morning. For those who want assistance, Uncle Tol is here, Uncle Dena is here. Talking about adolescent, raising the next generation, understanding adolescents today. And Dr. Njeri Karianjai is adolescent medicine specialist at Aga Khan University Hospital at exactly 1 minute after 9 a.m. Asante Sana.
Thank you.
Latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM. The only